Hey everyone, let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 106 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. Whoa. First, before we get started, I found a passage that I want to share in my journal, and I'm coming to you at the end of May, and this was something that I wrote, very, very quick paragraph that I wrote in 2017, May 29. And this is a quote. This little part right here is not my words. All things are lessons God would have me learn. And that's a quote from A Course in Miracles. And I wrote from that, inspired by that, everything is for my highest good. If I experience them differently, they are lessons God would have me learn to reach my highest good. Those are things I must be willing to forgive. And I remember when I wrote that, because what had been on my mind was the idea that we always say, myself included, or often say, is that God is testing us, or this is a test. And that just always rubs me a certain way, even if I say it myself. And this really resonates for me, that all things are lessons God would have me learn. And if something is bothering me, if I don't have ease about something, if I think I'm in a struggle, then I know that everything is for my highest good. If I experience them differently, if I experience the agita or the struggle, then these are lessons that God would have me learn and heal from, so that I can reach my highest good. And I have to be willing to forgive, because in all likelihood, it requires some forgiveness of myself. So that's a little tidbit I wanted to share before I get to my guest today. This is a unique episode for you, and that I'm bringing you two separate conversations about empowerment, healing, and aging in the workplace, and just what experiences are as we get older in life. I have with me today Sandra McIntosh, who is a business coach and a life coach, and she has a podcast called 90 Day Wins. And she really talks with people and helps them to accomplish their goals within 90 days. And I'm also talking with Stephanie Dean, who is a returning guest and a very, very good friend. And Stephanie works in the corporate world, and she really talks about ups and downs that she had in her career. And she's in a really great place now, and a really, really, that's the result of her coming to a place years ago of understanding what her needs are, getting in touch with her inner self, and really advocating for herself, with herself, and also in the workplace. And so I'm really looking forward to you hearing what they have to say. And such a big theme for me is about, especially in talking with Stephanie, is about really understanding who we are, just like it's important to understand who we are in this life, in this crazy world, and to really be in touch with how we feel and how things are impacting us and landing with us internally. It is important that we get in touch with those feelings in the workplace. How we show up outside of work, that same aspect of ourselves is also important in the workplace, so that we can have our own peace and our own balance. And really, that's what this is about, having balance and peace in the workplace, and really also aging in the workplace. That's been something that I've wanted to speak to over the last couple of months. And I think that's because I was in a large meeting, and a lot of the conversation if I'm going to be honest, it was speaking to younger staff, and it was speaking to senior staff. And I didn't really feel that the conversation was speaking to everyone else in the middle. And I thought, well, what about me? And I recognize how much I have to offer. And so I thought, hey, can I celebrate who I am? Am I valued for who I am? And I wanted to start talking to other people, because I'm talking about the workplace right now, but I was just listening to another podcast and race came up. And whether we're talking about race, religion, culture, and when I say race, I mean Black or white, men or women. Whenever we feel excluded, a part of us says, well, what about me, in my opinion? And so I want to speak to that. I'm sensitive to that. And I'm always going to be sensitive to that. I'm sensitive to anyone that I feel is not receiving equity or justice. It's something that tugs at my spirit. These are two women who feel very valued in the workplace, and they're probably about 5 years or 6 years apart in age, and both over 40 years old. And they feel very valued in the workplace. They mentor in the workplace. And that's so refreshing to hear, because ageism in the workplace is real. And there were some very interesting things that came up when I've been researching this and talking to other people. And so I'll put some links in the show notes. But right now, I want to get to Sandra and then Stephanie, and let's meet them and let's start healing. Welcome, Sandra.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so glad you're here. And, this is audio, but you are so chill. I wish everyone could see how chill you are.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk with you.
Thank you. Well, tell me about yourself spiritually. What is your knowing of God for you personally?
Yes. So I have my own personal relationship with God, and I think that's important. I grew up, my parents are from South America. Both of them are from Guyana, South America. And I grew up with a praying grandmother.
Yeah.
Right. And so I, at a very young age, knew that the relationship that I desired to have with God had to be with me. Right. And I had to learn and grow and still continue to learn what that means. Right. But I'm clear God and I go through the storm together.
Right.
So that has just really carried me through my life. No matter what the obstacles are, I remember that it's my relationship, and I can think to myself that, how we say God is the source, right? So you have to get plugged in. So sometimes I tell myself, you're not plugging into the source. You're trying to do this on your own. Yeah. And that's why it's not working, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to rest and let your heavenly Father guide you.
Like trying to control the thing.
Totally. Guilty.
I do that too. I'll be all stressed out and then I'll realize, well, that's because I'm trying to control this and make this happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny because then I have this cute little banter with myself, like, so your God can't handle this? Like he's not big enough. And it's like, girl, come on, you tripping.
Wow. This topic that I want to talk about women and the workplace and celebrating who they are and celebrating their age, and if a woman can feel comfortable celebrating their age in the workplace. It resonated with you a little bit. And why is that? How is that? Because you work on your own. What do you encounter for yourself or see with other people?
So I have the opportunity right now in my life to be able to do coaching, but then also to do some corporate consulting. So I get to work with different clients here in Atlanta. And because I'm coming in as a consultant, I meet people that are, newly coming into the accounting profession, people who have been there for some time, and people in the middle, right? I'm dealing with consultants that are working very IT driven. In this day and age, IT and finance really have to work together, right?
Yes.
So it's interesting because, like I told you, the years of experience as a corporate accountant and now coming in as a consultant and just seeing some of the changes and some of the mindsets of the people that you're around.
Right.
Companies are slowing down because of this, that, and the other. No, the expectations are higher than they've
Right.
ever been. And you've got to really be clear about why you're here. What do you desire to get? Because the companies are really clear about what they desire, right?
That's for sure.
So if you go into it really clear about what you desire, are you there to learn? Are you there to grow? Because there are amazing opportunities, so many different companies right now, right? You get in there, you figure out what leadership path you want to be on, what HR benefits are available to you, and you just plow through. You keep your head focused, but you understand what the goal is, right? So there are people like that. But then there are also people who have been there, who are burnt out, who are tired, who are frustrated, and really don't care about what you're there to do to help them do.
Well, there could be people who are there in the middle. They care about what they're doing, but maybe they don't feel valued.
Well, that's a big part of it. So my thoughts are, when I go in, how can I help make this easier, right? Because I've been those accountants in multiple different stages of my life.
Yeah.
I've been through those changes, a merger and acquisition, layoffs. I've been through so many different aspects of it. And now in my career, where I feel like I am most in control of what I desire, what I want, what I don't want to do, who I want to work with, when I want to work.
Right.
And I think seeing just what different people are going through, my goal is to help make their job just a little easier by the work that I do, by the knowledge I have to say, hey, I know if we talk to this department about this, they can help because they already worked on X, right? So my job is to go in and to let you feel as if I'm making your job easier.
Do you have any clients that are talking to you about age at their workplace?
Definitely, because it's so interesting. You think about people who are managing younger people who really don't understand what motivates them. I actually just recorded a podcast episode where a fellow coach was talking about her role in management as a head of a nursing division, and just the different levels of people that what motivates them, right? Like you have millennials and you have baby boomers, and people desire and want different things. So it is very front and center for many of us. When you think of, I have a client who is having a hard time keeping people. You would think, I have these openings, this person, anyone would want to come work here, right? No, not really. What else are you offering them? What sorts of benefits are available? Because it's actually pretty hard to keep people nowadays.
Yeah.
Even though you think you have a great job, but is it really great? Is it really being competitive with all the other companies out there? So there's so many things you have to think about. What motivates people? I think what you thought even 5-10 years ago about the workforce is so different.
Right. So you have people who are, maybe they might be an older manager and they don't know how to motivate younger people.
Yeah.
And what about people who are managing, how old are you? Are you, if you don't mind sharing, you don't have to share.
No. I'm in my late 40s.
Okay. So if someone is managing someone, say in their late 40s,
Yes.
Do you think it can be hard to understand what someone at that age would want, or what might motivate them, or how they might be driven or inspired?
I think so. I've seen situations where someone younger has come in and they are managing someone that's older. And so it's a different balance you have to have, right? Because you have to respect the fact, just by nature of you knowing this person has experience, right? And so you have to really understand get to understand the people. You can't just say everyone is motivated the same way.
Yes. Yeah, I was just thinking that. And I think I was actually thinking how earlier today at my job, I work at a newspaper. And I remember about 2 years ago, I don't remember if this was the whole point, but we at least started out this virtual meeting. It was when everything was just completely remote.
Yeah.
And so it was like maybe, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 people on a Zoom. And it was a generational conversation.
Okay.
And I think it was about maybe some kind of perceptions that we might have. And I found that I had a lot of the same sensibilities that 30 somethings had,
Okay.
Young 30 somethings had. And
Yes.
it basically was just about being open and, maybe creatively I might feel more aligned.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that it can be a mistake to think that everybody is alike.
Yeah.
It could be a mistake to think that all Black people or all white people or all women or all men,
Yes.
it could be a mistake to think that, we're all alike,
Yeah.
when we reach a certain point in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to have conversations to really understand what motivate people, right? I think when managers try to say, okay, well, you all have to do this way and we all have to follow this, it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. And when you think about what we've been through these last couple of years and people had the opportunity to experience different, everyone is questioning what makes sense for them. And I think we should, right? Because we have to realize what's important and really be okay with that. And companies have to be respectful of that, right? If they want you to come in at your best, you need to be afforded the time to relax. You need to be afforded the time to have the right tools to be successful.
Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Welcome back.
Yes.
How are you feeling right now in your skin? Where are you right now?
I feel great. I feel peaceful. I feel optimistic for the future. I feel there's a lot of good going on right now. So I'm feeling really peaceful and happy.
That's beautiful. What's going on good that
Well, my son's about
inspires
to graduate from high school.
Yes, that's true.
My husband got a job that he started in January, so that's changed our financial outcome. I'm starting to feel good in my skin about just about the impact that I'm able to make at work and in the world, and that I feel hopeful for our future in that way, that I can continue to do that, and that more people are doing that. So I feel excited that people are speaking up and speaking out, and shift is happening.
Beautiful. This topic that I wanted to address, asking women, do they feel comfortable celebrating their age in the workplace? And I realize that I just said women, but this applies to men as well. I'm just talking to women at this moment. It resonated with you when I brought that up.
It did. Yes. I have really felt a lot of confidence lately in the last few years that I have not felt in my younger years at work. And you said celebrate, and I shirked back and was like, I don't know if I want to celebrate my age in the workplace, but I tell people my age all the time in the workplace, and I feel very comfortable with that. And I just yeah, I'm 53 and I'm good with it. And I know I'm talking to 20 somethings all the time. I mean, I have 20 somethings on my team and we get along great. And it's not that we wouldn't, it's just that we have a very different perspective about life. And I feel comfortable with the knowledge that I have and the experience and the skills that I have, but I also feel comfortable with not being fearful. And that's been a theme of my career, is that I've felt like I wasn't doing enough all the time, that there was always a risk that something could change. I would get laid off, or I'd get a manager or boss that I didn't like or didn't feel comfortable with, or anything could change my scenario of where I was in my work life, and it would just make the whole thing sort of fall apart like a house of cards. And just in the last few years, I finally started to say, yeah, I feel good. I feel good in my skin. I feel good about the way I'm showing up at work and the way that I'm interacting with my teammates and my peers and leadership. And I'm able to speak out on things that matter as a matter of influence. And it just feels great to be 53.
I love that. And it sounds like you feel valued.
I do feel valued, but that is independent of how I feel.
Share more.
What I've come to realize is how people view you on the outside is irrelevant. It's the inner work that matters. And when you do the inner work, then whether you're perceived as being effective or perceived as being popular or a rising star, any of that stuff, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you're doing the things that you think are important. And if you're in integrity, you're also contributing to the company's goals.
That's big. That's big. And I think that you're saying that from two different perspectives. Right now you are valued, but you also just mentioned there were times that in your career that you felt fearful.
Very much.
And so can you share even more about how important it is to be in touch with who you are, you know, as a person, as a spirit, in
As
your
an
own
introvert.
skin? Yeah. Oh, yes. Thank
That's a
you for
huge one
saying
for
that.
me.
Thank you for saying that. You are
Yes,
you
I
are
am
an
a very
introvert.
big introvert. And it's been a blessing for me that I've been able to work at home many, many years before COVID. So when I was in Chicago, that's where I really started to take off in my career. And it was a very aggressive work schedule and culture. And I was working very hard and long hours and felt kind of disconnected to my husband because we were just on different planes. You know, we were both working our careers and we were together and we were happy, but I was just in the career zone. And then there was a point at which I said to myself, if we're going to have children, I'm going to have to take a step back. I'm not going to be able to do this. And I couldn't see my way forward as a woman in business doing what I felt like I needed to do to have a child. And so I ended up stopping my job, and I stopped it after 8 months at the place that I was at. And it was because it was a toxic culture. I just did not like it. It was not supporting me as an individual. It did not value me, even though I had a very high position. I was director of materials at the time. But
Now, did you have your first child at this time,
no,
or
not yet.
Not
No,
yet.
Not yet. And so when I was director of materials, I was really proud of the position and the accomplishments and the pay that came with it and just the scope of responsibility. But I was very stressed out. I was very stressed out and in fear and feeling toxic all the time. Like I could not ever work enough that would make me feel like I was living what I was expected to be. And I know it was imposter syndrome. I mean, I know that was a big part of it. But it was also just me understanding that this culture is not working for me. And they had me sitting on the manufacturing floor or on the shipping floor, and it was very loud all the time. And it just... at that time, I didn't know how much of an introvert I was, but it created this sense of I was just stressed out every minute of the day from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night. And that was the time that I was at work. It was all the time I was at work. And I was stressed out. I said, I can't do this. And so I quit after just 8 months. And so that was the first time that I quit a meaningful career position. I had quit one before, but this was the first meaningful time. And after that, I said to myself, I'm going to take 6 months off and figure it out. I did take 6 months off, got pregnant, went back to work for a much less position and less pay, but I was happier and I felt more balanced and I felt like I was kind of taking work back on my own terms.
So it's important to do things on our own terms. I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. But I was 33 at the time, so I still hadn't quite reconciled that. I hadn't reconciled what it meant to be really living life on your own terms. So I went back into a corporate position, and it was a lesser position and it was lesser pay. And I stayed there for 12 years, and I did get to work from home for 11 of those years. Actually, I stayed there 13 years and worked from home 12 of those years. But that working from home was my way of saying, these are my terms. But still, I felt stressed out. I felt like I needed to prove myself all the time, and people around me would say, you don't, you're doing fine.
Yeah.
And I'd say, yeah, I do. I really do. Because, I'm getting this luxury of getting to work from home remotely from Atlanta when my business was in Chicago. And it was something that I felt very fortunate about, but I didn't feel that I earned and deserved.
So it's about how we feel about ourselves. People can affirm us all day long.
Exactly.
But it's about how we feel about ourselves.
Exactly. So during that time, I started to do that inner work. And I said, I need to figure this out because I can't go around the rest of my life feeling stressed out. And so then I moved into my 40s and I had some spiritual awakenings. I think that's when you and I met. And it was a time of a really great spiritual boost straight up. just everything just felt like I was connected all the time to spirit and to, angels and just on the right path and flowing. And then there came a time when I needed to look for more income. And I said, I've got to get back on the career train and just start to climb the ladder again because my family needed me to be making more money. So I went to another position and I started that fear all over again. And so I said to myself, I can't do this again. I've got to stop and figure out what's different this time. So I really had to push back because it was a very active, dynamic, and growth culture. And it still is. I work there today.
Describe the industry. If you don't want to say the name of the company, could you describe the industry that you're in?
Well, it's a CPG company, and it's
CPG.
CPG is consumer products goods. So this is the kinds of products that you buy off the shelf every day to keep your life running. So it's consumables. And we work a lot with retailers. Retailers have very aggressive strategies. That's just part of the nature of the work. So it's a very fast-paced environment, and I loved it, and I still love it today. That hasn't changed. But what changed was me. I had to realize that at first I was coming in, with some boundaries. Like I was excited to be there, and then there were people who were seeing my value and excited for it, and that was wonderful. But then I felt like I was just getting a lot taken in terms of, because you can do it, do it. Because you can do this too. Because you can do this too. And now I've got 8 arms and I'm doing more than I really feel comfortable doing.
Yes.
So that was a point where I started to say, okay, because I can do it doesn't mean I have to do it.
Right.
And I can start to be choiceful about what's the biggest and best priorities for the way that I spend my time. And part of that time includes taking care of myself. And so I had some personal things going on at the same time, and 2 children, and my mother-in-law moved in with us, and it was a challenge to feel like you didn't have to have 8 arms all the time. So
right.
There were some years where I really went through the fire of, what they call the dark night of the soul, of really having to take on additional responsibilities that I wasn't prepared to take on, and then come through it with more grace than I really had to offer myself. And so I learned how to offer grace at the same time. And I think that's what the badge of honor that you get to wear as you age is, that you come through these experiences and you come to have perspective about them, and you realize that they are part of you and they define you, but they don't break you.
Mm-hmm.
And
what do you mean when you say they define you?
Well, I can't undo those feelings of fear and stress and feeling like there was just way too much on me, and I was bitter, and I started to disassociate from people, really pull back from people because it was just too much.
That was your life.
And so I can't take that back. I have to live with the impact of how I walked around in the world. And yet I can offer myself grace to say that was a time and I've learned from it and I can do better.
Exactly.
And so I think now is the time to say, you have the wisdom and the experience to say, you don't have to do that. You don't have to walk through that fire with so much burden on yourself, and you can ask for help and you can say no.
Right.
And that's a gift that you get as you age that you don't really have so easily as a young person.
Right. Well, maybe this generation, now the younger generation, maybe they do know they can say no because they are different. But I do get what you're saying, because that I went through something in the last few years. And at the time I was going through it, I was asking, what is this for? What is the lesson? What is this for? And no matter what I tried to do to make a shift, it felt like nothing was making a difference. But then I came for me to realize that it was for me to appreciate me.
Yes.
And to understand my own value.
Yes.
And to set my own boundaries.
Yes.
So that's what that was for me.
Well, and I love that. One of the things that I do at work is I lead a book club. We kind of rotate, different people rotate through leading this book club. But one of my favorite books that we read was called Playing Big by Tara Moore. And she talks about how you don't want to diminish yourself. You want to bring all of yourself to work so that you can bring the best value that you have. And when you're trying to play within what you perceive to be the box of conformity, then you don't get to bring all your value. And so people miss out on that value. And so that's where I think we've got to, especially as women, we've got to challenge ourselves to get outside of that box.
When you try to play within the box of what we think is conformity, the box that we don't want to be in, that's not going to work for us.
Exactly.
As a person.
Exactly. So I'd made some notes for myself. And one of the notes that I made was the really understanding what the patriarchal system means for us, because we know we've got to dismantle it. We've got to break it down, but it doesn't mean we're anti-men. It means we've got to look at things that don't work for us. As women came into the workplace, we didn't lay down a lot of responsibilities that we had outside. We didn't change the ways that we showed up to the world. We show up with our hearts. And the fact that we show up with our hearts means we don't necessarily fit into the same box that the men set back in the 1940s and 50s when the office corporate culture really started.
It still exists, or there's remnants of it, or whatever we want to call it.
Sure.
There's elements of it.
It's 9 to 5 work hours.
Yeah.
It's work in the office work hours. It's work for your review, climb the corporate ladder. All those things are part of the patriarchy. Studies have shown that women actually don't have ambitions to climb the corporate ladder the same way men do. And so they care a lot more about having an impact, connecting with people, feeling like their work is meaningful than they do climbing the corporate ladder and getting money, getting paid for it. Now, of course, we want to do some of that, but we don't all have the aspiration to be vice president or president of the company. We don't all have aspirations to keep going until we just drop. And we have to understand how we show up differently. And what I tell people that I mentor is work is not, bringing your best is not bringing 9 to 5. It's bringing magic. It's taking whatever it takes for you to integrate your life and bring the best talents that you have to your work. And sometimes that means working at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is very true for me. Sometimes people get their best inspiration at night. And then we have things that come through the day that we have to address and deal with. And so this integration that we are really needing in the way that we work is finally starting to happen. And people are now no longer talking about work-life balance as much as they are work-life integration.
Right.
That's what women are bringing to the place.
Right. I agree. I think also that you're at a company that seems to embrace that kind of thing. And not everybody is at a company that does that. And so they have to adapt in a different way. Yeah.
Well, I tell people that corporate culture matters a lot. I said, when you go to look for another position or you think you don't have the opportunities you want here, make sure that you're interviewing them and not just them interviewing you.
Yeah.
Because you want to be intentional about lining up your values with the place that you work and you spend all of your time. I mean, most of your daylight hours are spent at work. And so I really encourage people to stop and look at the culture and think hard about where they are and be willing to leave it, because there are places we're moving towards requirements, thanks to the younger generation, requirements for us to be delivering more meaningful interactions as human beings.
Yeah.
I think we all as professionals have to have a network. And the older I get, the more I have a network. And that's another value of aging in the workplace, is that I've had the benefit of working from a number of different companies, and I have, coworkers and mentors and bosses from all of those companies that I still stay in touch with here and there. But networking, even within the company that you're in, is a skill that you want to hone over time. And it's not just, I need to know people so they can get me jobs. This is a network of people connecting with people and helping people as a village. And we are not able to, connect as the local village that we used to have in our grandparents' age. So now we've got to find a new village, and our new village is on LinkedIn. It's in the workplace, at the water cooler. But we've got to really take those relationships sincerely.
And it's harder working remotely.
Very much.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Someone else who's coming up on an upcoming episode on this topic, and like you, she feels very comfortable with her age in the workplace, and she feels that she's able to mentor other employees and, younger employees, and that they really look to her for wisdom and absorb what she has to say. That's what you were talking about.
Yeah. I do love mentoring, and I definitely would spend all day talking about mentoring, because I feel like some of the pain that I went through, some of the fire that I went through might be avoidable. The world has changed so much in the last 30 years that I've been in the workplace that I feel like it's a chance for younger people to have different experiences. You can't save them from their own fires, but maybe you can save them from the ones that I had. So they're going to have their own fires, and they'll be different, but they'll maybe be a little bit improved from where we were. And that's what you always hope for the generation behind you, is that they have a little bit easier time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the other side of it is, worrying about purpose, becoming obsolete, feeling like you're out of date with the times. And I see young people coming out of college who know more about supply chain and about analytics, which is my field, than I did after 10, 15 years in the workforce.
Really?
So they're just coming out so much faster and more experienced and more knowledgeable, and they get it. They get context way better than I ever did. And so that's intimidating because, you have to go, well, am I still going to be relevant in 5 more years, 10 more years? I might not be ready to go before they're ready for me to go. And I see that happening with some of my peers in my age group. And the challenge for us is to surrender some of that, because we still do have a lot of value. And so even as people are coming in, and right now my challenge is in machine learning, because I've come through analytics and I'm really, really good at analytics and teaching analytics. And I've always had a natural affinity towards it. So where you're naturally curious is where your strength and skill goes. But now machine learning is coming up and AI is coming up behind it. And I feel like I cannot get it.
What does machine learning mean?
This means you basically offer code to have it start to self-perpetuate and tell you things about data that you would not find yourself, because there's just way too many data points. And so you have the machine sift through mountains and mountains of data to be able to pull out the ones that matter and bring forward those insights that you can't find as a human being.
And so that's where you're saying you're not as on top of it or as knowledgeable
it's hard for me to get. And it's something that I am now managing a team of people who are doing this work. And it's hard for me to get. So I have to say, okay, I need you to slow down, talk to me again, tell me again. And I definitely feel like the mature person in the group.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a place still for us, and that's been, kind of a surrender point, is just to let some of this wash past me. And my own maturity is to say, I don't have to be the smartest person in the group all the time.
Yeah. And
I can be still a person who has value and things to offer to the group without being the one who's right on top of technology.
Right.
Because that's a challenge for people as they age, is to stay up with technology.
Right. And at the same time, your company seems to be supporting who you are and where you are, and I would imagine that's not just you. That could be a colleague who may be your age or a little older.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. I wonder if that's common. If it is, that's awesome.
I hope so, because we have a big knowledge bank that's about to leave with the baby boomers. There's a huge knowledge bank about to leave the workforce.
Yeah.
So I hope that is valued and appreciated before everybody.
One thing that's coming to my mind with what you just said is, as you know, I'm a reporter and I cover local government for different cities, and I find that a lot of residents in the cities that I cover will bring their expertise to whatever issues are going on. It's like the cities can't necessarily just say, okay, this is going to be the way this project is, because the residents have all this knowledge and they're not 20 and 30. They're 45, 50, 60, 65 years old with all this knowledge and information from their own career. And they're able to bring educated information to these topics. Yeah. To your point.
Yeah. Exactly. We've got to value every generation and all the perspectives that come through our culture, and because that's how we get better. Through valuing all of it.
Right.
I guess the other thing that I would say that I'm proud of and interested in as an older person now, and I'm not old, I'm just middle-aged. I'm just going to say that. I'm not ready to surrender that. My mother-in-law told me one time a few months ago, she said, the senior center, you're probably going to qualify for the senior center. I'm like, I am not going to own that. I am not going to own that yet.
It is amazing to me how people, because I experience this all the time, how people just want to just put stuff on you, put stuff on us like, you're old or you're this or you're, things regarding age. I don't think I do that to other people. I don't think I do that. I just try to mind my own business.
Right. No, it's smart. Well, and age is just a number. I mean, in the context of eternity, which is where my context goes, if I died today, I would be sad because I would be leaving this earthly life and there's some things that I'd want to do. But I would also be okay because I'm going back to bliss. I feel like that's
Exactly.
the choice is
Yeah.
I get to stay here and do more things I want to do, or I get to go back to bliss. Well,
Yeah.
how can you argue with that? And if I get to stay till I'm 80, that's great. My thing is, I hope I have good health. I hope
Yes.
and so that is the piece to
Me
me that
too.
matters now, is that I've got to exercise and make good choices about my food, because the quality of life that we have on earth is the concept of aging that we all understand. And so it's on me to keep myself in the best shape that I can to protect that quality of life
Right.
in the future. But beyond that, I think aging is just, let's live it to the fullest and let's go out singing and dancing if we can. No, I'm not much of a singer or a dancer, but I'd still like to imagine that I could one day. The other thing that I was thinking about as I made some notes and I was kind of looking over my notes again is that sense of knowing yourself. And you really get to know yourself more as you grow and age than you ever can imagine. So there's a lot of personality tests and things that we can do to get to know ourselves. And people start that pretty young these days. And I'm talking about Myers-Briggs and, strength finders and Enneagrams and those kinds of things. And I'm also talking about identifying how you work best. Is your best working time in the morning or the evening? Is it that you're an introvert or an extrovert? Where do you find your energy
Right.
expanding or diminishing? And so those things, they take time to figure out. And so we start out just trying to fit in the box because we're still all going to school and, working for teachers' approvals as kids are graduating from high school and college. And then you start the workplace and you're working for your boss's approval. And now at some point there's a divergence where you start to say, this doesn't work for me. And these are the qualities that do work for me. And I need to go find those.
Right.
And I think age helps you really, the more you spend time looking at yourself and doing that inner work,
Right. Right.
the better it gets.
Something that I like to ask is, what do you think that God calls you to do for yourself and others through your work? What do you think that is? That's really coming to me as you're talking.
Well, I've spent a lot of inner study time thinking about what my life purpose is. I'm very clear that it's learning and teaching. So I love to read. I read probably 4 books a month, and I don't say a book a week because they're in parallel. I tend to read 1 book when I'm on my elliptical and 1 book when I'm at bed at night and 1 book when I'm traveling. And so through the course of the month, I'm going to read 4 books, and they're going to be a variety of topics. It's anywhere from studying my business and getting better at analytics to studying what's going on with culture and how I need to educate myself so that I can help others be awake and aware of how they show up in the world and how that impacts other people. And so as I read and I learn, I love to share that knowledge and I love to talk with people about these topics because it energizes me. It energizes me to have deep conversations about any topic. And I also love the aspect of helping people understand hard topics. So for instance, in the analytics world, I teach classes about, Power BI and different classes. And that is so rewarding for me because I just love the aha moment. And so that feels great. The other side of it is that I've found myself in my life being a spokesperson for advocating for equity. And it's a thing that started when I was 8. I actually, and this was not about a black-white thing or anything else. It was just when I was 8 years old, I had a substitute teacher because my 3rd grade teacher had a baby and she was out for maternity leave. And my friends and I had noticed that she was going behind a curtain to do some extra reading with some people. And in our 8-year-old perspective, we're like, she's giving them special treatment. And so I went to the principal's office because my friends kind of said, we need to go talk to Mr. B. And so we go line up at the principal's office and he comes out and sees 4 little girls, 8-year-olds, ready to march up and talk to him. And he said, well, I'll take one of you at a time. And they said, Stephanie, you go first. I said, okay. So I go first. And then I come back out and they were all gone. They have all dispersed.
Oh, no.
Like,
that is funny.
Wait a minute. Where'd y'all go? But that was the first time I really advocated for inequity. And that was not even an issue of, culture or anything like that. It's just saying, hey, this isn't right. And I'm
Yeah.
going to speak up about it. And so then I had to go home and tell my mom and dad about it. And they had already heard about it. And they were, laughing and saying, well, what exactly happened? I'm in the dark and I'm so embarrassed. And then I realized over the course of my life, that image of that story has come back to me so many times because I found myself being the spokesperson against inequity so many times. And it has since many, many times showed up as being an inequity for race and cultural acceptance of people who are different. And so it's not just a black-white thing. It's also, how people from other countries show up and, their cultures may be different from ours. And we are just a product of where we're born. And so we come in with these expectations and biases and, privileges and predispositions simply based on where we're born. And so
and when
we're born, you're right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we have to start to look past that and understand that people are people and that we need to lay down a lot of these biases. And so I've really found myself to be living a purpose in my life, which is to stand up, to speak out on behalf of other people in that way.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. So I want to shift to some spiritual questions. And I want to ask you something actually you have thought about whenever you do retire.
And I can't wait.
When you do retire, you've thought about actually living in Europe.
The country, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So would you like to share about that?
Sure. Well, there's two things to that. One is that I've always dreamed to travel. I've always dreamed of travel, and I've never really felt that I had the resources or the time or given myself permission mostly. It's just about giving yourself permission, I think. But I've been pretty heavy in responsibilities in my life. And so, my dream and my husband's dream, and we dream about it actively and intentionally, is to say, as soon as we're out, as soon as we financially can make it happen, let's just go. And it's not just Europe, it's anywhere in the world. We just want to go and stay as long as we feel like staying and then move to the next place. And so some of that is just this wanderlust and independent streak, and some of it is just this intense desire to see the world in all of its glory. I mean, I know that people who have traveled have come back and told me that you really have a totally different perspective when you have a world view than when you have just the one place that you've lived view. And I've lived in a few, which is great, and I've traveled a little bit, which is great, but I really want to do more of that.
Yeah.
The second piece about when you retire is you have to have a purpose. And so I think that's part of the worry as people age and, think, well, maybe I'm not valuable anymore.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that my life is purpose-filled, even as we travel. And so we talk about how do we, not just let it be tourists, the ugly Americans seeing the world, and how do we really make that a life of meaning and volunteering and just giving back. So we're going to keep that as part of our front and center plan too.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think you've learned? Is there anything that you've learned just in the last 3 years? You're 53. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you've learned, say, since you turned 50 that, it could be related to work. We were talking about work when this came up for me. Mm-hmm. But is there something that has just been enlightening for you? And it doesn't have to be because of the pandemic or anything. I'm just curious if there's something that's been. Yeah.
Well, it's finally starting to click. I feel like I've been learning these lessons of life my whole life. And sometimes I just love Oprah's saying when she says, Lord, just don't teach me nothing new today because I'm all filled up. I've just got enough lessons right now. But you don't get to stop. So you just got to keep going. And I loved your podcast that you did with Lador because you were talking about what life brings you. You can control how you respond, but you can't control what life brings you. And that is absolutely a lesson that I've been taking in the last few years is how I respond really matters. And I'm so grateful for some of the people that have come into my life in the last few years because they've just reinforced that I am valuable and I am worthy of love no matter what shows up. And so the external factors don't matter. It's how you show up. And the people around me have reinforced that. And it's been a fortunate thing because I needed that. I needed that reinforcement. But then there are times when you don't have that external reinforcement and you feel like everybody's just kind of piling on top of you and all your weaknesses. And you still have to find that way through to say, well, you know what? that may be how you perceive me, but that's not how I know I am. And I'm going to stay with that and just be okay with myself.
Right, right. Yeah, I have a cousin who I think I've told you about, or you've seen her on Facebook, and she's 90.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been visiting with her a lot lately. And yesterday I was visiting with her, and she was just spouting all this wisdom. You know, it was just very laid back. You know, she was just talking about life. And one of the things she was saying, I mean, the themes were to be present, which is big time for me. I get in trouble when I'm not present. And to be on your own side, to understand your own worth, and to be on your own side.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And to not take life so seriously. And that is something that kind of fascinates me. I didn't watch the last season, but when Billions was out, I can't think of the main character's name, or Damian Lewis is the actor. But, you know, it's high finance, Wall Street, mergers and acquisitions, all that stuff in New York, set in New York. And when a deal would not go his way, you know, working really hard to make something happen, real ruthless and all this stuff. And when a deal wouldn't go his way, I just get like fascinated about how he was just sort of calm. You know, not like calm before the storm, just kind of like, just didn't work out, you know?
Yeah. Well, y'all talked about that in your podcast too.
Exactly.
You talked about that. About, she was talking about her son saying if they didn't make a goal, shake it off, move on, get back down the court.
Exactly.
That's so.
And it
good perspective. That's a great perspective.
It is. It is, and it's something I've been thinking about today. I really want to go back to the Bible, and I'm not even going to say anything more about the Bible other than this point. But Ecclesiastes in the Bible, I brought that up in the 100th episode. You know, the everything is vanity under the sun, and I'm just like, it really is. It really is. No matter what we do, it's really just kind of all the same. Yeah. And, you know, we want a certain outcome, and it comes down to a certain thing. It comes down to love or ego. It really is. And,
that is truth.
And I think that I'm not sure if I told you that there was a friend. Did I tell you about a friend who passed away, and we were the same age? And we just found out maybe a month ago that she passed away in 2021. Because people had not been in touch, you know, and everything. Yeah. And I remember that she was very conservative with her money. And, you know, because she was thinking about retirement, and, you know, she was very smart, you know, in that way. She's very conservative. And I'm not as conservative as she is. And, you know, I think about that, and I think about, you know, and she was very guarded, very guarded. And she had reasons to be guarded, but I'm like, she's gone.
And she didn't have a chance to ever just really live and enjoy it.
And maybe she lived her life the way she wanted to. Still, my thought is she's gone. And so, you know, we can make all these preparations and then not be there to experience those things. Everything is vanity under the sun.
Well, you certainly have to live now. I mean, that's the truth. And that's something that's hard for me, because I'm a person who's more like a preparer, like she was maybe. And to just say, I've got to take care of my business first, and then I'll allow myself to relax and enjoy my life.
And it makes sense to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, my big thing is, of course, we have children, and we want to make sure that they're well cared for. And I would love to see both of them turn into adults before my time came. And I would love to model for them that they can enjoy their lives, because I think they've seen me in a lot of responsibility and just kind of a holding pattern through COVID and some stuff, you know, but it's a matter of, we've got to make the choice to be both responsible for this earthly life that we're living, because we have earthly bodies that have consequences. We have material things that, you know, if we choose to live in society, we got to pay the rent, the mortgage, the bills, all that stuff. And those are just part of our requirements to live on earth. But also some of those requirements have been inflated, and we don't have to have a big house. We don't have to have a nice car.
Yeah.
You know, and I look around, and that's part of our exit plan, my husband and I, is just to say, what can we put on our back? And that's really all we're going to keep.
Yes.
Because that's all that really financially matters. So it's definitely a balancing act that we have to choose to get the best of this experience.
Well, thank you, Stephanie.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Me too. You have to come back again and not wait 3 years, maybe in
so.
another month or so.
So I don't know about that soon. I am an introvert after all. You got to hold a little respect for that.
Well, you're a big supporter of Let's Start Healing.
Absolutely, I am. I absolutely am. I listen to every episode. It just might take me a week.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can listen to all Let's Start Healing episodes on traditional platforms. Until next time, let's start healing.